Welcome to Super Mario Bros Bonanza, the show where I'll be reviewing every Super Mario platformer and ranking them from best to worst. Previously, I played through the first 18 mainline titles and determined which was the ultimate game. You can find a link to that in the description. But when ranking each game, I played the original version, or at least a close approximation. Which is to say, if I could play it on the Switch, I did. But in the annals of Super Mario history, many a game have been remade for the then modern console, and I could not rest until these updated versions were compared against their originals. What does this mean? A handful of Mario games have received proper remakes over the years. Re-releases with slight updates such as New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, or any of the eShop releases do not count. Remasters like those in the 3D All-Stars collection, despite having slightly adjusted controls and better resolutions, also do not count, which leaves three main groups. The first four Mario games were remade and released as Super Mario All-Stars for the Super Nintendo. The first five, plus Yoshi's Island, were then released on handheld devices, and Super Mario 64 was remade for the Nintendo DS. And now, it's time to see just how good these remakes shape up to the originals, starting with Super Mario All-Stars is a collection of the first four Super Mario platformers released for the Super Famicom in Japan for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System elsewhere. The game is comprised of Super Mario Bros., originally released in 1985, Super Mario Bros. 2, originally released in 1986, Super Mario Bros. 2, which was released in the US in 1988, and Super Mario Bros. 3, which first released in 1988. But it can't be that clean, since the video game market was much less unified in the 80s and 90s. The availability of these games in different markets was finicky. The original Mario released in 1985 in the US, Europe in '87. The Mario Bros. 2 released worldwide wasn't brought to the Famicom in Japan until 1992, 2 years into Super Famicom's life. Mario 3 wasn't released until '90 in the US and over a year later in Europe. And Japan's Mario 2 wasn't released worldwide at all. The first time players had easy access to all of these titles was when All-Stars released in '93. Ideation for All-Stars began back in 1992, shortly after the release of Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development's latest game, Super Mario Kart. While working on their future title, Yoshi's Island, not a Mario game, Shigeru Miyamoto and the team decided to work on this package. Since at its launch the original Mario 2 was deemed too difficult for worldwide audiences, Miyamoto wanted a good way to release it outside of Japan. He suggested collecting it and the other three Famicom/NES games as a value pack. And while ports could have sufficed the access argument, the team instead opted to fully remake each game, taking advantage of the massive power boost the Super Famicom/SNES supplied. The team's first task was to update the art. Every game was flushed with detail and color. Backgrounds were given new elements like hills, statues, or portraits, and the sprites were reworked to include details that would more closely resemble the art from Mario World. The music was all reorchestrated using the sound fonts from World, with some new effects being added in when necessary. All the while, the team strove to keep the base gameplay and physics as close to the originals as possible. They played through each game, level by level, preserving the architecture and physics to the point where when encountering bugs and glitches from the original, instead of fixing them all for the remake, they chose to keep ones that weren't helpful to the player, while erasing those deemed harmful. For instance, glitches that would cause the player to get stuck were removed, but the infinite lives glitch in Mario 1 was re-implemented, albeit with a restriction on how many lives could be gathered. And, utilizing the batteries in the new cartridges, save states were added for each of the games, allowing for saving and quitting at any point, which resulted in the games becoming more forgiving. What also made the game more forgiving was that after a game over, the continue screen started the player at the top of the world instead of at the top of the game. And about a year after its initial release, a new All-Stars bundle that included Super Mario World was released, with the main difference in World being an updated Luigi sprite. But regardless of version, most agreed All-Stars was an amazing package. While deciding which of those 4 original Mario games is best was, is, and always will be a hotly contested issue, most agreed that the versions included in All-Stars were superb. Some criticized the fact that the games remained largely unchanged from their 8-bit selves, that same point being a positive for others. But most agreed that these 4 games being on a single cartridge made it incredibly valuable. Many went so far as to say it was a must-own cartridge, one of the best games on the console. I first played Mario All-Stars around the time it came to the Nintendo Switch Online service in 2020, and I didn't even touch Lost Levels at the time. My experience with these games was either with their original NES versions or their Game Boy Advance counterparts. When I did finally try All-Stars, jumping into the original Mario was surreal. The songs were ever so slightly off, and I recognized the sprites more from flash animations I watched on Newgrounds than from the actual game itself. The other games were more familiar to me. The Advance series was based on and adapted from the All-Stars versions. Despite my initial aversion, I enjoyed all of All-Stars at the time, and was eager to experience it all again to properly rate it. Opening Mario All-Stars, the game greets the player with a nice new title screen accompanied by a jaunty little tune. The game selection screen is quite simple. Scroll through each of the game's cover arts to select that game. Of the 4 included, a set of updates were applied across the board. What's likely the most impactful was the saving system. Each game has a series of save files with their own progressions. Then in the game, saving has been vastly expanded. As a person who is objectively bad at the original Mario, it was so refreshing knowing that I could die numerous times in World 8 and pick right back up at 8-1, instead of having to perform the entire game all over again. This feature was, well, less used when I played Lost Levels because, well, I do not like that game. Using the Switch feature, I rewound whenever I encountered even the slightest of frustrations, but still it's a really good feature to have. It was also implemented in 2 USA to similarly good effect, but I never got a game over in 3, so I can't say exactly how well it was done in that title. Another fun update was the addition of title screen music. Each game received a lovely composition of the Mario 1 underwater theme to accompany the title. Super Mario Bros. Title theme was composed as a slower waltz. Lost Levels feels more majestic with a synthetic orchestra for instrumentation. USA is jauntier with old-timey piano that's much more in line with the game's soundtrack. And 3 is jazzier, also much like the game. Last, each of the games received their own unique code of paint and songs to accompany their respective adventures. On an interesting note, occasionally certain sound effects would still cancel out others, so too many jumps would cancel out part of the backing track. Despite the upgraded hardware, this particular issue still remained. Super Mario Bros. Received the biggest visual enhancement. There is quite simply new everything. Mario's sprite has been reimagined to be much more similar to his appearance in World, while keeping the colors closer to the original. All the environments have been given so much more character. The grass levels are beautiful to look at. The black and white levels are now set during night with twinkling stars up above, and the wider levels have been converted to snowy areas. The Cheep levels have statues scrolling by in the background. Castle levels have portraits of the King Koopa himself hung throughout the halls, and the in-level elements have been completely reworked. Pipes are straight from Mario World. The end-of-level castles are so much more detailed. Bullet bills flap their little arms as they fly, and the Goombas look like, well, they look like that. Maybe should've rethought that one a bit. Regardless, all this extra detail and color adds so much to the experience. I loved seeing what new background elements would scroll by. The snow levels were a joy to run through. After defeating each King Koopa, instead of a generic Toad yelling at Mario, each were given a super cute and unique animation where the Toad or Toads abscond from their bag. And rescuing Toadstool was not only given yet another fun animation, but a much larger image pops up depicting the princess kissing the plumber. Oh, what? Nintendo's lawyers are informing me that I must disclose that Mario and Toadstool are not in a committed relationship. Strange. And she's blonde now, too. The music, on the other hand, is a bit off. Everything was redone using the Mario World steel drum, and it loses something in the translation. The original Mario theme has never been my favorite Mario track, but there are certainly better arrangements than the All-Stars version. Even the original, with its limited sound capabilities, is still distinct because of said limitations. Versions from later games like Sunshine or Odyssey all bring their own unique twists that justify the composition. This version feels like it's adding for the sake of adding, and that goes for all the redone tracks. None are bad, but none feel special. There was one entirely new track. All the King Koopa fights are now accompanied by a really neat boss theme. Not that I heard much of it. Boss fights are over fairly quickly, but the bits and pieces I did hear were quite good. Speaking of hearing, it was incredibly strange hearing the updated sound effects. Not bad, but strange. Sounds that I so intrinsically associate with Super Mario World pop up all over the place, which was a bit jarring. Maybe it's a placebo effect from the beautiful new pixel art, but I really love how this version of the game played. In all but one way, everything feels just a little bit better, ever so slightly easier to control. This could have been from having very recently played through the NES versions of both this and Lost Levels, and naturally getting better through practice, but they did recreate the game whole cloth. Maybe the physics were improved as a byproduct, except for smashing bricks. In every other Mario game, after smashing a brown brick block, Mario will be pushed back towards the ground. In this version, he continues traveling up through where the block once was. This was seemingly done to fix some game-breaking bugs, but it also does not feel good. Decades of games have taught me Mario controls one way, and this is the sole example of it not doing that. This one blight is the only knock against me declaring this the best version of Super Mario Bros. And it's entirely forgivable. This is the best version of Super Mario Bros. I don't think I'll ever go back to the NES version again. The updated art does so much for me, and the perceived control updates seal the deal. Not that I really want to go back to this game too often anyway, but still. And also I hate Hammer Bros. Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels has one major issue. It's still Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels. It's still the worst Mario game, and it didn't even receive any substantial updates to fix that. The save thing helps, of course, but it's not enough. All the art was updated, but it's the exact same artist from the All-Stars version of Mario 1. Even the Toad and Toadstool animations are the exact same across both games. While the updated music is also identical, the final castle's foe King Koopa fight did give me the opportunity to listen to more of that boss fight theme. But Lost Levels is a bad game. It's cheap tricks in lieu of challenging platforming. The art doesn't do enough, the music doesn't do enough, and the weird brick thing only makes it worse. I can't say I will ever play Lost Levels again, but if I was forced to, it would be the All-Stars version. Super Mario Bros 2 USA, on the other hand, this game is fantastic. While the Mario 1 updates didn't always hit, everything in the All-Stars version of 2 USA feels just right. As is the case with all the games, the art was reworked, but unlike the Goombas from 1, every enemy looks exactly like they should. Birdos, Shy Guys, Phantos, Ninjas are all definitively themselves, now with more colors and pixels to play with. And the environments were gorgeous. 2 USA already did an excellent job of feeling like an adventure with how the level entrances correlated with the previous level's exits, but the added details in the floor and platform textures, and especially in the backgrounds, make this journey so much more extravagant. I loved trekking through the grasslands, seeing some type of temple in the background. I loved the ice cavern walls. I loved the shrines to Phanto. I love watching Princess Toadstool soaring serenely over the sea atop an egg. And the accompanying score was even better than the original. And the original is already great. But through the reorchestration process, each of the songs managed to keep their ragtime feel and were only enhanced by the improved sound chip. A stark contrast to how it was implemented in the original. The gameplay is, as far as I could tell, the exact same. Mario and Co. pick up veggies or enemies or things and throw them. Toadstool is still the best character to use, Fry Guy is still the worst boss. The levels are still fantastically designed, only now with a fresh coat of paint and a somehow even better soundtrack. The All-Stars version of Super Mario Bros 2 USA is stunning in how amazing it is. It's arguably, potentially, the definitive edition. Super Mario Bros 3 was already a late-era Famicom/NES game. By that point, Nintendo had gotten really good at squeezing out every pixel. As such, it was the game that needed the least amount of polish. The core game had already done the hard work of making interesting scenery, finalizing enemy designs, composing excellent music, and making one of the best designed platformers out there. But the polish they did add took it to the next level. The backgrounds were fleshed out, the characters were given much more detail, Mario himself was shaped the same as in 3, but the color palette was updated to be red and blue, and Toadstool was once again made blonde. Interestingly, the animals that the kings were turned into were changed. What were once normal animals like dogs or seals were updated. Mario 2 USA enemies Hoopster and Albatos replaced a spider and a vulture. The Mario World creatures Dino Rhino and Yoshi replaced a Kappa and a Venus fire trap. My opinion on the music, though, is closer to how I feel about the original game reorchestrations. The compositions are good, but the steel drum renditions don't quite fit the aesthetics of the game as well as the original did. I wish they were more akin to the title's jazzy remix of the underwater theme. They're not bad versions by any means, but not quite as definitive as the originals. And the rest of the game feels exactly as good as it should. Mario 3 was already the best NES Mario, they didn't have to change anything to keep it great. It's a fantastic game with a nicer coat of paint, and that horrible visual glitch on the right side of the screen is gone too. Super Mario All-Stars is undoubtedly a fantastic package. A beloved update of this sort, where 4 classic games were lovingly made modern while retaining what made them good, seems nigh impossible anymore. Nintendo themselves couldn't even do it with Mario 3D All-Stars, which was instead a collection of slightly adjusted ports, which didn't even include Galaxy 2. It's hard not to consider each of these games their definitive versions. The updated sprites do so much to make these games feel amazing, and the slight gameplay adjustments only iron out any kinks. As a reminder, the current 2D games ranking is 11 Super Mario Bros 2 The Lost Levels, 10 Super Mario Land, 9 Super Mario Bros Wii, 8 New Super Mario Bros 2, 7 Super Mario Land 2, 6 New Super Mario Bros, 5 Super Mario Bros 2 USA, 4 New Super Mario Bros U Deluxe, 3 Super Mario Bros, 2 Mario Bros 3, and 1 Super Mario World. For Ranking All-Stars, the fact that this includes the best version of Mario 1, Mario USA, and Mario 3 means it is destined to be towards the top. Mario 2 Lost Levels also being here can't drag it down, at least not too much. The new 2D Mario games ranking is 12 Super Mario Bros 2 The Lost Levels, 11 Super Mario Land, 10 New Super Mario Bros Wii, 9 New Super Mario Bros 2, 8 Super Mario Land 2, 7 New Super Mario Bros, 6 Super Mario Bros 2 USA, 5 New Super Mario Bros U Deluxe, 4 Super Mario Bros, 3 Super Mario Bros 3, 2 Super Mario All-Stars, and 1 Super Mario World. But I can't declare the All-Stars versions as definitive just yet. Each of these games and Mario World were released on handheld consoles. The Game Boy Color sold so well, and the Advance held its own, it was only natural Nintendo would want to put these games on their portable consoles. Next time, we'll be looking at Super Mario Bros Deluxe. The Game Boy and Game Boy Color sold astronomically well. With their numbers combined, Nintendo sold 118 million of those little handhelds. Naturally, Mario did well on the console. His first venture, Super Mario Land, sold over 18 million copies. Its sequel sold just a bit less with 11 million copies. Any game would be lucky to sell to that many people, but with a Game Boy's lifespan extending throughout all of the 90s and into the new millennium, that Mario money only went so far. With the release of the Color hardware revision, it only made sense for Nintendo to further capitalize off of the plumber. SMB Deluxe released in 1999 in both North America and in the UK. Interestingly, Japan didn't get a proper release. Instead, interested parties could have the game copied to a memory cartridge at a Nintendo Power kiosk located in a Lawson convenience store starting in March 2000. Despite not properly releasing in Japan, Deluxe sold impeccably well too, ending with just over 5 million copies, and Nintendo went into the development cycle knowing this outcome, or at least very strongly believing it would be the case. Development was done by Nintendo Research and Development 2, and was led by Toshiaki Suzuki in his directorial debut. The team worked with Miyamoto and Nakago, who designed and programmed the original game respectively, and had a relatively pressure-free development cycle, porting both the original game and its sequel, as well as adding a whole variety of other features. And as a bonus, being one of the first games released on the Game Boy Color, Deluxe is the first handheld Mario game to appear in full color. Aside from selling well, Deluxe was also very well received both at the time and in retrospect. But for me, the game may as well have never existed. My first Game Boy was an Advance, and I never went back to any of the previous generation's games. And in my years of playing all the classic Super Mario platformers, finishing every single one and ranking them from best to worst, researching and reviewing each, I never noticed that Deluxe existed, to the point where I only stumbled upon Deluxe as I was looking up information about All-Stars. I was fully prepared to jump into the Advance series right now before panicking and scrambling for a playable copy of Deluxe. I at least was able to plug my Nintendo Switch SNES controller to my PC, so it wasn't entirely off. The Super Mario Advance series is a completely different story. Mario Advance and its sequels were my childhood Marios, sans World, which I first played on my SNES. For every other game, I didn't play the original versions until I purchased them on the Wii Shop. I couldn't give the exact order in which I received them, but I can guarantee I played the hell out of each and every one of the Advance games. Though I never had an e-reader, so I only played the basic Mario 3 levels. I have such fond memories playing Mario Bros Classic while waiting at my dad's work one day, running through Mario Bros 2 on a road trip to my nana's, playing Mario 3 while listening to a bunch of Beatles albums on a road trip down to my Nino's, fantasizing and theorizing about the new intro to Mario World, where'd they'd get those balloons. I was incredibly excited to jump back into these versions after so many years. The Super Mario Advance series consists of 4 games. The first to release, Super Mario Advance, is a remake of Super Mario Bros 2 USA and released in March 2001 as a GBA launch title. In late 2001 and early 2002, Super Mario World Super Mario Advance 2 released. Yoshi's Island Super Mario Advance 3 released later in 2002, and finally Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros 3 released late 2003. They had a hard time landing on a naming convention. Despite that though, each game sold well. None reached quite as high as either of the land games, but the 2, 3, and World remakes managed to surpass the sales of Deluxe with over 5 million copies sold for each. Even Yoshi's Island Advance 3, while only reaching a respectable 2.8 million, still landed in the top 10 best-selling GBA games. After their success with Deluxe, Nintendo Research and Development 2 continued to lead the remake project with some supervision from key members of the original game's dev team. Advance 1 was directed by Toshiaki Suzuki, Advance 2 was directed by Hiroyuki Kimura, with supervision from Miyamoto himself, and Advance 3 and 4 were also directed by Kimura. Each successive game received less and less oversight from the original dev team, presumably due to trust in the team growing with each release. Each title was reworked and based on their SNES counterparts with varying levels of differences. They were all given new introduction cinematics, which led into a game selection screen with a choice between the original game or a remade version of the original Mario Bros. Arcade, dubbed Mario Bros. Classic. The main games themselves were all somewhat compressed due to the limitation of the GBA. The screen had less pixels to play with. It had more than the original Game Boy and Color screen, but much less than the SNES. As such, the camera is slightly zoomed in, and some of the levels themselves were reworked to fit the screen better. Due to the screen resolution and lack of backlight on the original GBA model, the color palettes of each game seem slightly washed out, and the music and sound effects are much more compressed. More substantially, each game was given something new to play with. Every stage in Advance 1 now has 5 ace coins to collect and a post-game challenge to find hidden Yoshi eggs. Advance 2 now keeps track of all the dragon coins collected, and each level has at least 5. Advance 3 has 6 new post-game levels, and Advance 4 was given a full suite of additions via the Nintendo e-reader device. The games are also now at least partially voice-acted. In Advance 1, Charles Martinet and Jen Taylor sound clips now accompany each playable character as they hop around. Plus the bosses shout at the player too.
This is as far as you go!
The rest of the games also include Martinet and Taylor, albeit with less regularity than in Advance 1, and Kazumi Totaka now voices Yoshi in Advance 3. Speaking of Yoshi, Yoshi's Island is not a Mario game, it's a Yoshi game. As such, it will not be mentioned again. I did not play it, but I was unimaginably ready to play the other 3 titles and to finally see what was up with that e-reader stuff. At the top, Super Mario Bros. Deluxe is Super Mario Bros. With some nice accoutrements. There's a pretty new title screen, a nice new selection menu accompanied by pleasant new music. Then, when in the game itself, the levels are broken up by a really neat map screen showing where Mario is on his adventure, with some neat animations like Mario crushing each fortress underfoot, and a high score menu tracking how well each run went. Aside from that, it's mostly Super Mario Bros. It looks a lot like the original game. Due to the smaller screen, the HUD elements are simplified a bit, but the graphics and music feel like they're straight from the NES. With one major problem. The smaller screen also means less of the level can be shown at one time. The development team accounted for this. The camera can be repositioned to look up or down, so not all jumps will be leaps of faith, and Mario can run backwards a bit more than usual, but it doesn't fix a bullet bill coming in from just off screen, or a Koopa shell, or a Goomba. It was deeply frustrating not being able to see as much real estate as I could in any other version of this game. I understand sacrifices had to be made for this to work on a handheld, but throughout my 40 minutes of playing, I found myself longing for the land games, since they were at least designed for the console's screen. But Deluxe doesn't just contain a somewhat upgraded version of Super Mario Bros, it also includes the lost levels after beating the original, which I didn't do. So I didn't play Lost Levels, as well as some really cool other features. Playing through the game unlocks images in a gallery, there's a calendar, and a fortune teller for some reason, but the meatiest and most interesting additions were the challenge and boo modes. The challenge modes take every single level from the base game and adds red coins and Yoshi eggs to be found throughout each, as well as a goal to clear the stage with a very high score. The Boo Race was the most fascinating addition. Many levels were taken and modified to add new hazards for Mario as he races against a Boo to the end goal. There are spikes, trampolines, different level geometry, and these Boo blocks that toggle from solid to passive whenever Mario hits the face block or when the Boo gets a little tricky. And there are a total of 3 Boos to beat, each requiring a faster time to unlock and an even faster time to triumph. And I would have loved to have really sunk my teeth into both of these modes. I love when developers take existing levels and add to them to create new experiences. But I still don't like playing Super Mario Bros. All that much, and the shrunken screen was a no-go for me. I wasn't about to try to avoid the Boo's new hazards or searching for every red coin when I couldn't see where I was going. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe is a really neat package. They added so many really cool things, but it's still Super Mario Bros. It still plays exactly like Super Mario Bros., unfortunately, and the screen is way too small. Despite its charm, I walked away more frustrated than anything. Super Mario Advance, on the other hand, oh my god, I'm in love. After having played both the original and All-Stars version of SMB2 USA a handful of times over the past few years, finally playing Advance 1 again felt like coming home. Even seeing the new intro cinematic was refreshing. The 4 playable characters take turns lining up, show off their unique jumps, then collectively pull out the logo from underground. Nostalgia aside, I really like how in this brief window the game is able to demonstrate a large aspect of how the characters are different and introduce plucking veggies as a concept. Before the main game, this and every other Advance game, and also Superstar Saga, included Mario Bros. Classic, and I love this little game. When the Advance series was first added to Nintendo Switch Online, the only thing I did was jump into Classic and play a run. It's simple, of course, there's no major deviation from the original. It controls a bit better, Mario and Luigi can grab the POW block like in SMB2, and crouching for a bit charges a super jump. Other than that, it's just a great time defeating Spinies, Crafts, or Fighter Flies while collecting as many coins as possible for points, I guess. Give me a good podcast and I could play this game for hours on end. But if not choosing the Pipe Tube Mario Classic, the doors open to reveal Birdo and the group's adventure in Subcon. And this version of Super Mario Bros. 2 feels so good to play. The game as a whole was made significantly easier. Saving and game overs are much more forgiving. Many of the enemies were made easier, like ninjas taking longer to turn around or bullets traveling slower. Plus, the enemies only respawn when coming back in from a different area, where in the original game they respawn when the camera scrolls past their spawn point. And the most impactful, hearts and lives are so much easier to come by. Hearts can be found hovering in the air, have been swapped for some plants, and throwing something and defeating at least 2 enemies, or just one of the new large enemies, always spawns one. Plus more 1-ups have been added, including some trapped in bubbles, or getting each of the ace coins in a level. Speaking of leaving and re-entering areas, this causes both enemies and pulled out plants to respawn. On one hand, the enemies are back, but lives and hearts can be grinded by re-defeating them, and potions are much easier to play around with. If I was a few blocks off from the mushroom spawn, or maybe more than a few blocks in a few cases, I could almost always leave the area and try again. And there are more mushrooms per level. These modifications, as well as the game handling better in general, made for a much breezier experience. Instead of fighting against the controls and sometimes finicky hit detection, I had a great time exploring each level, searching out extra shrooms, and the 5 ace coins. It wasn't all perfect, of course. The screen size has shrunk a little bit. Some of this was alleviated by changing the levels themselves, but what it really meant was not always seeing as much of the level as I wanted. There is a way to toggle the camera position, but it never felt amazing. It was in no way as bad as it was in Deluxe, but it was suboptimal for sure. The graphics were arguably a downgrade as well. The washed out colors don't look quite as good as their SNES counterparts. But even with that, the team made some very cool changes. Peach is now Peach, and is colored with her modern palette, and the character select screen does a neat trick where they rotate around. The bosses were also shuffled with a brand new Mecha Birdo being added in. It's just a big Birdo fight, but it had a couple new moves to avoid. The addition was cool. And the voice acting. Super Mario Advance is the very first time Charles Martinet appeared in a 2D Mario game, and it was a fascinating addition. Every time Mario jumps, or Peach digs, or Toad gets hit, their slightly compressed voices ring out. And I mean every time. Maybe they were a bit overzealous with that, but also all the bosses now have introductions and taunt the player before the fight. Birdo screaming, "I'll remember this," will stick with me forever. All the audio adds so much to the overall experience. The post-game was another great addition. After Wart is defeated, the mushrooms in each level are altered. There are now only 3 spots, 2 of which have been replaced by giant Yoshi eggs, both of which need to be collected during a single run without dying to be collected. It adds such a fun extra challenge to each level. Super Mario Advance is a great game. Super Mario Bros 2 USA was already really good. The sense of adventure was already superb. All-Stars added beautiful colors and backgrounds, and the ease of play and additional collectibles brought into Advance only made it even more fun to explore. It is the definitive version of Super Mario Bros 2 USA. Super Mario World, Super Mario Advance 2. Super Mario World was already a perfect game. As such, the Advance version didn't have as much to update. However, that also meant it had much more to lose. First of all, I love the new introduction cutscene. Seeing Mario, Luigi, and Peach arrive on the island is such a nice touch. Mario and Luigi flying around, showing how the capes are utilized, while sampling a whole host of the various enemies to be encountered, sets up the game itself quite well. And the slight duck Luigi has to perform so as not to have his brain slammed by Mario is pretty darn cute. The actual game had very small adjustments. In this version, co-op was removed, so now Mario and Luigi can be toggled at will, and some of the levels were slightly adjusted to fit the smaller screen. But more importantly, where dragon coins were in most levels before, now ghost houses and castles include them too, and each level will have at least 5. plus the select screen tracks every level's completion and which coins have been collected. The Dragon Coin progress resetting is my biggest complaint of the original Super Mario World. So then, what happened to make this game lesser? The wrappings are simply not as good. The colors are washed out, which was the case for Advance 1 too, but it's much more noticeable here. While technically looking worse than the All-Stars version, Advance still looks much nicer than its NES counterpart. Advance 2's only comparison is the SNES version, making the less than colors stand out significantly more. And the audio is bad. I've listened to the soundtrack and sound effects of Super Mario World more times than I can count. Their advanced counterparts are too compressed, too crunchy. In the attempt to fit this much sound on one GBA cartridge, they very nearly ruined these classic songs. It was honestly quite distracting at first. Even the addition of Charles Martinet's voice clips couldn't save it, although I will say they're quite memorable. I think of the "just what I needed" audio clip quite frequently, and the frequency was reduced to major events like collecting power-ups, finding all the dragon coins, or beating a level. It was no longer for literally every action. The game also loses some functionality with a lack of X and Y buttons. Spin jumping might technically be easier with it mapped to the R button, but it doesn't feel right. Also, it wasn't a common issue, but some of the objects I interacted with didn't have quite the correct physics. Things like the Reznor platforms or the skull boats had moments where jumping off or around them was off. Super Mario World Super Mario Advance 2 is still a really darn good game. Many of the additions were really nice to have. It's cool that castles are replayable, and how both them and ghost houses have dragon coins. It's nice that the game notifies you when every level's been completed, and the cutscene for collecting all the dragon coins and activating fall mode were really interesting. But all the nice-to-have additions didn't quite make up for everything lost during the conversion. But again, Super Mario World is still Super Mario World. It's still fun to play, regardless of the platform. Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros 3. Look, it's still Super Mario Bros 3. It looks near identical to its All-Stars counterpart. The colors are ever so slightly brighter, but it's not something I even noticed. The levels retained their similarity. Any updates were mainly to adjust for the screen, with a couple new item blocks placed here or there. One of the more interesting additions to the main game was Mario and Luigi mode. After Mario completes a level or dies, the game switches to Luigi, who can then travel to any available level to try that instead. The game tracks which brother beats which level, and each brother has their own life count and item inventories. And if they meet each other on the overworld map, one bro can pass lives from one to the other, or take them if he really needs it. Luigi controls a bit closer to how he handles in SMB2, but it wasn't so bad. He's mainly just a little bit slippier. The other adjustments were fairly minor. Peach is recolored, everyone is voiced, although their lines are borrowed from previous entries, Peaches being ripped from Mario Sunshine. If every level was completed in a world, a nice splash screen announces it to the player, and the nicest touch, after beating Bowser for the first time, the world map opens up, allowing for any level in any world to be replayed. Where Mario Advance 4 gets really interesting is with the e-reader levels. This being the final entry in the Advance series, the development team had a bunch of previous assets to play around with, and they did. There are 73 levels in total, and they are wild. Like in Advanced 1 or 2, each has at least one Advance coin to collect, with special levels containing a unique E-coin that's harder to acquire. Then I opened up the first and was greeted with a 1-to-1 recreation of World 1-1 from the original Super Mario Bros, working flagpole and all. Then later I traveled through a level with both buried turnips and chargin' chucks. So many elements from previous games were utilized to astonishing effect. Mario World style ghost houses and springs show up, SMB2 flurries and hoopsters are rendered in Mario 3 styling, even those horrible little penguins from Yoshi's Island pop up to push Mario around. Yoshi's Island is still not a Mario game. Having never seen any of these levels before, it was a true joy hopping into the next one and seeing what could be around every corner. And even aside from the novelty of the elements and enemies from other games, the levels themselves were a blast. The advanced coins added such a nice challenge. In some cases, they were the challenge. One level had the exit just to the right with no hazards in the way, but collecting every coin involved scouring a tall tower, traveling through door after door, seeking the solution to get to the next. The difficulty was no joke either. From extra long airship levels, underwater feats, digging frenzies, multi-pathed castles, the starting difficulty started with SMB3 World 8 and only got harder. It was so fun being truly challenged. I'm so glad I finally had a chance to master them all. If only I didn't have to do it with Luigi. In the base SMB3 mode, Luigi is manageable. In the e-reader levels, he controls much closer to SMB2. Oh, how I dislike Luigi's controls in SMB2. But the game tracks the advanced coins, e-reader coins, and which brothers beat the level. So I had to beat them all with both. There's also a couple mini-games to get lives or items, they were fine. Super Mario Advance 4: Super Mario Bros 3, geez Nintendo, those titles, is a fantastic package. The base game alone wouldn't be worth too much. It is still a great game, of course, but the Mario and Luigi mode didn't add much. The e-reader levels put this title in a whole new level. Do I wish they were made with the Mario World physics engine? Yes, but alas, they were still stunning. And it's truly saddening that they were locked behind the poor-selling e-reader device until relatively recently. More fans should experience these extra levels. Overall, an absolutely stellar package. First, let's rank these games among themselves. Obviously, Deluxe is my number 4. The original 2 Super Mario Bros are already my least favorites in the group, and to me, the vastly smaller screen makes them all that much worse. Number 3 has to go to Mario World Advance 2. It's my favorite game, but the additions didn't add enough, and the compromises took too much. Number 2 is Mario Advance 4 SMB3. The e-reader levels are amazing, but the base game was exactly as good as it's always been, which is why my number 1 is Super Mario Advance. I love this game. It holds so much nostalgia for me, and it received the biggest updates to the gameplay itself. SMB2 was already improved by All-Stars, and the fact that it got remarkably better with Advance is a testament to the developers. And now to rank these in the overall 2D games list. As a reminder, the current ranking is 12 Super Mario Bros 2 The Lost Levels, 11 Super Mario Land, 10 New Super Mario Bros Wii, 9 New Super Mario Bros 2, 8 Super Mario Land 2, 7 New Super Mario Bros, 6 Super Mario Bros 2 USA, 5 New Super Mario Bros U Deluxe, 4 Super Mario Bros, 3 Super Mario Bros 3, 2 Super Mario All-Stars, and 1 Super Mario World. It might be unfair, but I'll be looking at these as 2 entries: Super Mario Bros Deluxe and the Super Mario Advanced series as a whole. I do not like Deluxe very much, despite the neat addition, so I know it won't be very high overall, but despite Advanced 2 not doing much for Mario World, the overall package does so much for these classic games. This is such a tougher decision for me. Are these 3 games better than All-Stars? In some ways, yes, but All-Stars has the best versions of the original 2 games, and as a whole looks better. My new 2D Mario games ranking is 14 Super Mario Bros 2 The Lost Levels, 13 Super Mario Bros Deluxe, 12 Super Mario Land, 11 New Super Mario Bros Wii, 10 New Super Mario Bros 2, 9. Super Mario Land 2, 8. New Super Mario Bros, 7. Super Mario Bros 2 USA, 6. New Super Mario Bros U Deluxe, 5. Super Mario Bros, 4. Super Mario Bros 3, 3. Super Mario All-Stars, 2. Super Mario Advanced Series, and 1 Super Mario World. Even though it's a worse version, Advance does have Mario World, and the e-reader levels are darn good, and SMB2 is peak. Now on to the final remake, a full proper remake, taking one of the most beloved 3D Mario games and porting it to the then most recent handheld, the Nintendo DS. This was my first experience with this highly praised title, and it has forever warped my opinion of it. Needless to say, I am so ready to finally see if my nostalgia holds out when I replay. Super Mario 64 DS is a Nintendo DS game that released towards the end of 2004 in the US and Japan, early 2005 elsewhere, each launch day correlating with the release of the console in that region. While Nintendo Research and Development 2 handled development for the Deluxe and Advance games, merging with Nintendo Software Planning and Development Division ended that particular initiative. Instead, Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development, arguably the main Nintendo development division at the time, and the developers of the original Mario 64, took up the mantle. Shigeru Miyamoto himself stepped in as producer and supervising director, with Shinichi Ikematsu directing. Unlike the All-Stars, Deluxe, or Advance remakes, where the goal was to closely emulate games with minor visual and gameplay updates, the 64DS project from the get-go set out to do much more. Throughout much of the original Mario 64's development, Luigi was intended to be playable in a co-op mode. While memory issues and camera controls eventually landed this mode on the chopping block, the idea clearly persisted. Entering the ideation and development of 64DS, it was both implemented and fully expanded upon. Now not only are Mario and Luigi playable, but Yoshi and Wario too, each with their own stats and powers to differentiate one from another. The game was first revealed during E3 2004, then named Super Mario 64 X4, and showcased this update on the then unannounced Nintendo DS. This iteration showed all 4 playable characters running through various areas and even facing off against Bowser, albeit in a stage very dissimilar from the main game's arenas. Also, this version of the game had courses selectable from the touchscreen instead of through exploring Peach's castle, and while in single-player mode the current character was toggled via tapping the screen, all indicating that this version was closer to a demo than the final product. The version shown later that year was in a much more finalized state. During the announcement of the Nintendo DS later that November, the game was fully revealed as Super Mario 64 DS. This reveal confirmed that the game would be primarily a single-player adventure featuring the 4 playable characters from the earlier demo. It would also have a suite of touch-based minigames to enjoy, and feature a multiplayer mode. The developers at Nintendo SP&D did much more to the game than allowing 3 more characters to run around these existing levels. Every aspect of the game was altered, at least in some way. The most substantial being how the game now begins with Yoshi as the playable character. Mario, Luigi, and Wario must be unlocked via their own distinct levels and boss encounters. All the courses were also updated. Each now includes a 7th star to collect, and many of the existing stars were altered, swapped, or in some cases removed and replaced. The power blocks have also been reduced. Now, instead of different blocks allowing Mario to have different powers, instead one type of block gives each of the characters their own unique power. Mario can fly with a wing cap or puff into a balloon. It's context sensitive. Yoshi breathes fire, Luigi turns invisible, and Wario turns metal. Any stage that would have had a wing cap grants Mario the wing cap, otherwise he gets the balloon. Each element also received a massive visual overhaul. Most of the textures were updated to be more detailed. The game no longer relied on texture filtering, which is the process of blending where textures connect with one another to make a smooth pattern, and all the models were reworked, with many that were originally sprites now having proper polygons. Mario, Yoshi, and Bowser are now all on model. That is to say, they now much more closely resemble their appearances in Sunshine, which is how they persist to look in perpetuity. Then things like bob-ombs, coins, scuttlebugs, swoops, sniffets are all now rendered as modern 3D objects, and in some cases are depicted much closer to how they either looked in 2D or how they now look in 3D. Super Mario 64 DS released to largely favorable reviews. Most enjoyed the new content, many appreciated the stars and playable characters and minigames, but a reoccurring sentiment was the controls. The lack of a true analog stick made the game tough to play. That and the fairly bare-bones multiplayer that seemed more tacked on than anything, which did not affect the sales. 64DS landed as the 10th best-selling DS game with just over 11.06 million cartridges sold, the best-selling handheld Mario since Mario Land 2. And of course, I had one of those cartridges, well, at this point, 2, maybe 3? I haven't always been good to my games. Both my brother and I remember getting our very first Nintendo DS and our copy of Super Mario 64 DS as a birthday present. Of course, memory is fallible, especially when it's been so long, and the DS released early enough in November that it could very well have been a Christmas present, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona, so the weather would have been roughly the same during either. It's tough to say for sure. What I can remember is that we would have gotten it within the year released, and I played so much of that console, so much of this game. See, for many people, their introduction to Super Mario 64 was set in front of a cathode ray tube television set holding one of the worst designed controllers ever made. For me, it was with this silver, prone to breaking dual screen hovering inches from my face, and I took this machine everywhere. I first learned the secret of the slide, looking up to the light in the foyer, the mysterious fourth door, the variable water levels in Wet-Dry World, the time stopping in the clock, bringing this game to school and discussing it with others. I spent countless hours sorting bob-ombs or keeping Mario from falling or listening to that floating head laugh in the minigame, and I have the fondest of memories connecting with other classmates playing what I dubbed at the time My Star, as we battled each other in the multiplayer during Summer Kid Zone, at least before moving on to that Metroid demo or Mario Kart DS when that released. To this day, when I think of Super Mario 64, I think of its DS remake. I think of Yoshi, the extra bunnies, the extra stars, the minigames, to the point where when I first played Throwback Galaxy in Super Mario Galaxy 2, I was wondering where that extra platform around the back went. When Nintendo announced Mario 3D All-Stars, I was annoyed that Nintendo didn't even try to bring the extra stars and updates from 64DS into the package. Also, where's Galaxy 2? With the release of 3D All-Stars and the subsequent release of 64 on the Nintendo Switch Online Plus Expansion Pack service, all of my most recent playthroughs of 64 have been on the Switch-ported original version, and my time with it has always been mildly frustrating. Even my most recent, when I used the N64 Switch controller, I missed all the fun things 64DS brought, and the controls were just slightly unrefined, just different enough from its closest contemporary, Sunshine, that I couldn't get over it. When it was finally time to replay my favorite version, I was of course incredibly excited, but also reserved. Would this game really look as good as I remembered? What about the controls? Would I be able to put up with the D-pad and the touchscreen? And are those extra stars actually good? Super Mario 64 DS is great. It is the definitive version of Super Mario 64. It took everything that was great about the original, polished it with more precise controls and more detailed visuals, added great new elements with the extra characters and updated levels, making it the ultimate adventure through Peach's Castle. End of review, goodbye. Okay, maybe I jumped the canon just a bit. 64DS regularly integrated its updates throughout the entire game. Some are more subtle, many mostly visual, then some of the bigger changes are presented front and center. Even the introductory cutscene presents an entirely new world. The castle looks largely the same, but all the surfaces are more detailed. Then of course Mario, then Luigi, then Wario jump out of their own pipes, run into the castle, and sometime later the Lakitu Bros wake up Yoshi to start the adventure proper. The rest of the game continues this. The game is remarkably similar to the original, until it's not. Most of the levels have some altered geography in at least one way or another. Sometimes it's a large platform wrapping around Whomp's fortress, sometimes it's a new bridge making Hazy Maze Cave a tad bit easier. Each of course has also had their stars reworked. They were all given a brand new one, which usually wound up being a Switch star. These tasked the players to get from a star button to the star location before the timer runs out. Good luck! Silver stars were also added to the game. Tick-Tock Clock, or Bob-omb Battlefield, now require collecting 5 silver stars. And if the player is hit while carrying one, the star will pop out and bounce around until collected again. Other stars were altered in more subtle ways. King Bob-omb must be fought twice, once with Yoshi spitting bombs at him, the next the normal way. The first star in Hazy Maze Cave now requires Wario to smash a boulder on the island. The Whomp atop Tick-Tock Clock now has a different layout. Many of the changes are due to the newly added characters and their unique power sets. The Room with the Secret Slide level has been expanded to have 5 new doors. 3 are clearly designed based on the missing characters, the 4th mysteriously blank, and the 5th leads to the Rec Room, the in-game area to access the minigames. The keys to each character's door are unlocked via an entirely new stage, culminating with a fight against a menacing, often mustachioed master. The Goom Boss, King Boo, which was seemingly misnamed as Big Boo, and Chief Chili hold the keys for Mario, Luigi, and Wario respectively. Although the Goom Boss battle was the only wholly unique fight. Hey, and apparently, I'm just reading this right now. He's from Paper Mario? I guess? News to me, that's the only Paper Mario I haven't played was the original. Each character can run and jump, although their speeds and heights vary. Yoshi can eat most enemies with their tongue, can do their patented mid-air hover, but they can't punch anything. Mario plays much like in the original and is the only character who can wall jump. Wall jumping now also acts like it does in Sunshine, no more bouncing off walls. Luigi can run on water for a short time, swims the fastest, has a slower descent while jumping, and has the best backflip. He gracefully spins as he gently descends towards the ground. Then there's Wario. He's strong, the only character who can break the black bricks and can stomp posts in with a single pound. But he's slow, doesn't jump very high or very far, isn't all that much fun to play as in general. After being unlocked, or in some cases before, any of the characters can turn into any of the others, sans Yoshi, by putting on their hats, which can be found throughout the level, as is the style nowadays. Sometimes a Goomba's wearing one, maybe it's just lying around, or if playing as Yoshi, a cap can be selected before starting the mission. Regardless of who the starting character is, the character-worn cap determines the active moveset and the item block power-up. This, for me, meant that the best character to play as was almost always Yoshi. Start the level with whichever hat I need, if necessary, and as long as I didn't get hit and lose the cap, I was good to go. That being said, it was always weird seeing, say, Luigi jumping around, but hearing Yoshi's voice clips come out. Of course, I grew up with these updates. For me, this is the default Mario 64. All these years later, I still adore each and every one of them, and it was fun to see what these developers were able to do with these levels 8 years after the release of the original. I loved having to plan out and execute upon the fastest route for the Switch Star levels, although I'll admit towards the end the formula of the 7th star almost always being won became a bit rote, and I especially enjoyed the addition of the silver stars. The added challenge of not getting hit while tracking down each one was really fun, and in the panic induced when I did get hit, helplessly seeing the star go wildly bouncing away while the star I just unlocked was bouncing in a completely different direction added so much to the collection process. One thing I've learned about myself throughout this series is that the aesthetics of a game have a bigger impact on my enjoyment than I previously thought, and I find 64 DS to be a more beautiful game than the original. To me, this version of Mario looks right. Even though he's chunkier than his Sunshine version, even though during the final cutscene his model isn't detailed enough to hold up the peace sign, this applies to the rest of the cast as well. I like all the updated designs more than their originals. It was also nice how the 2D enemies, and especially the coins, are now properly modeled. Sprites floating around were good enough at the time, but the sense of physicality the 3D models bring to the world makes them feel so much more real. And while the draw distance still isn't the best, I found it much more bearable than in the original. Plus, the fancier textures look so good. Everything looks similar enough to evoke the same emotion, but I enjoy looking at them so much more. Koji Kondo's music from the original was all reused, with new tracks orchestrated by Kenta Nagata. The audio technically took a hit on the handheld speakers, but unless I go out of my way to compare the DS tracks to the originals, they sound good enough to me. Now for the thing I was the most worried about, the controls. I admit they could be better. The team was clearly limited by the original DS and its lack of a proper joystick. Of the two methods of controlling the game, by touching the bottom screen or by using the D-pad, both left much to be desired. But I played Super Mario 64 DS on my Fire Emblem Fates branded new Nintendo 3DS XL system, and by playing this game on a 3DS system grants access to the thumb pad. And honestly, using that felt great. Having a proper joystick, even though it's technically only emulating the 8 directions of a D-pad, alleviated nearly all my discomfort. Even without access to a 3DS, there are ways to play this game on certain devices with a joystick, and that is absolutely the way to go. After the hurdle that is the D-pad, actually controlling the game is much closer to not only Sunshine, but 3D Land as well, which is to say I had a much better time with it than in 64. I had an easier time timing my jumps, aiming where I wanted to go, and the radius for grabbing edges is much more forgiving. Plus, moves like triple jumps that previously didn't let Mario grab ledges now do. It's all in all much more lenient when it comes to the platforming aspects of this platformer. And it's the first 3D Mario with a run button in the 64 version. Mario would pick up speed as he ran, and it frustrated me to no end. His speed determined his jump height, making any stage where I had to get up to a platform with not much runway a slog. I would inevitably miss the first jump, bounce off the platform, then slowly turn around to set up a backflip. In 64 DS, I held the run button and made the jump. A feature so useful, it was brought back for both 3D Land and 3D World. The camera being mapped to the touchscreen also felt a bit off. It controls much better than in the original. The rotational degree is much more incremental, and there's a button to center the camera behind the character's back. Most time, I wanted the camera at a certain angle, including every time I attempted to navigate a narrow platform. The game would let me do it. Walls do still block the camera from moving, so sometimes I had to rotate the camera 250 degrees the other way to achieve the correct angle, but it was nowhere near as big an issue as it was in the original. Being mapped to the touchscreen does make me miss the GameCube's C stick, heck, it even made me miss the N64's C buttons, but it was navigable at the very least. Nothing's perfect. The Bowser boss fights were surprisingly difficult. getting the tailspin up to the right speed was so much harder without a proper joystick, even while playing on a 3DS. Much of the movement was improved, but sometimes turning characters or properly aiming jumps, especially that elusive side somersault, were still tough to pull off. But the steps Nintendo SP&D did to make the game feel more modern were all steps in the right direction. They also added minigames. A fresh copy of the game has 8 unlocked, 2 per character, with the rest found by tracking down bunnies that have been added to the castle. Each character has 7 bunnies to track down and catch, each releasing another key to the rec room, totaling 36 games overall. These are pretty cool. As a kid, I spent hours with my favorites. Nowadays, I look at them more as a novelty. None are especially better than early mobile fare, but there are some real gems. Just to see if I could do it, I got wanted to over 1,000, the score itself apparently capping at 9999. It's maybe not the best game. For instance, if one's good enough, like myself, it basically cannot end. But seeking out Luigi as he's hidden behind a bunch of other faces tingles something in my mind. I also really enjoyed the trampoline ones or the slingshot ones. Luigi's pair matching minigames were excellent, and my all-time most fondly remembered favorite has to be Sort or Splode. I love putting bombs in the correct pens. Many of the others were so basic they're not even worth mentioning, but minigames as a whole were really neat additions, especially back then. This time around, I didn't have a chance to re-experience the multiplayer mode, but child me would say it was great. Adult me would get tired of the 4 stages pretty quickly, but running around and beating up other Yoshis, trying to get the most stars and coins, donning caps when I could, then when in the lead, desperately trying to avoid the others, well, it still sounds like a blast, at least for a while. Most importantly, one last feature was added. When the DS is closed, Mario says, "Bye-bye," and when it's reopened, he says, "It's a me, Mario."
It's me, Mario. Bye-bye.
Perfect game. In the end, Super Mario 64 DS is great. It is the definitive version of Super Mario 64. It took everything that was great about the original, polished it with more precise controls and more detailed visuals, adding great new elements with extra characters and updated levels, making it the ultimate adventure through Peach's Castle. This title, maybe more than any other in the Super Mario platforming series, is heavily colored by nostalgia for me, and that's okay, because we can all agree Mario 64 is pretty darn good. I just prefer this flavor over the original taste. Now let's rank this game. As a reminder, the current 3D ranking list is 7. Super Mario 3D Land, 6. Super Mario 64, 5. Super Mario Sunshine, 4. Super Mario Galaxy, 3. Super Mario Galaxy 2, 2. Super Mario Odyssey, and 1. Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. Obviously, it's better than Super Mario 64, and that we all can agree. And while I do love Sunshine, and given the choice, I'd probably play it over 64DS, I think the fact that 64DS has the wonderful levels from 64 without being bogged down by the earlier iterations' physics pushes it ever slightly above my other childhood favorite. Our new ranking is 8. Super Mario 3D Land, 7. Super Mario 64, 6. Super Mario Sunshine, 5. Super Mario 64 DS, 4. Super Mario Galaxy, 3. Super Mario Galaxy 2, 2. Super Mario Odyssey, and 1. Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. It's great, but it's no Galaxy. The entire top 4 consists of absolute juggernauts. And while that is it for the Super Mario remakes throughout the years, there is one more title to rank. In 2023, Nintendo revisited the 2D Mario series, finally breaking away from the new Super Mario mold, a mold that was used for 13 years. After giving it some time to marinate in my subconscious, I'm finally ready to revisit and properly rank Super Mario Bros Wonder. Wonder released for the Nintendo Switch worldwide October 20th, 2023. Yet another simultaneous release, a rarity for the series as a whole, and what is now becoming a pattern for Nintendo's first-party releases. This game came out during what was a tough time for me. I hadn't handled the whole global pandemic thing particularly well, and I was 11 days away from being back on the job market. But at that precise point of time, I was smack dab center within the eye of the storm. I had a ton of time off I had to get rid of, hope in my heart that the next gig would be better, and hey, a new Mario's coming out, and that doesn't happen all that often. I was so bored and so excited to the point where the day before it released, I legitimately asked a Best Buy clerk if I could get my copy then instead of waiting for the next morning. Well, the following morning I was there bright and early outside the store right before they opened. I was the only person there. For Wonder, at least, I'm pretty sure I saw one other person walking out with their copy of Sony's Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man 2. I went straight home and played as much as I could, having a blast, getting blown away every level by the sheer audacity of the developers. SMB Wonder was developed by a team within Nintendo Entertainment Planning and Development Division. The project was produced by Mario underappreciated GOAT Takashi Tezuka and directed by Shiro Mori, who previously worked on New Super Mario Bros. U and directed its Deluxe Switch port. Tezuka started the ideation phase wishing to do something new with Mario, do something new with platformers. After hearing snide comments during the development of Super Mario Maker 2 stating that the stage builder eliminated the need for another proper 2D Mario game, Tezuka was compelled to prove the naysayers wrong. And tapping into Nintendo's impossibly deep coffers, the team was given no time limit, no deadline. The game would be done when it was done. They had as much time as they needed to create this next iteration of platforming, a blessing that no other studio in the world has, not one of this size at least. Is Silksong out by the time this posts? Probably not. The team started small, focusing on how to make the game truly compelling. How could a modern Mario elicit the same surprise and wonder that the original did back in the 80s? The idea of moving the player from one area to another was one of the earlier ideas brought up, but Tezuka gave it a soft rejection. Pipes already did that, but the concept festered and grew and slowly evolved into the idea of fully transforming the level itself. Once this decision was made, then the development process turned into brainstorming ideas. Thousands of ideas were brought up, and everyone had a part in the ideation process. Tezuka and Modi, of course, but everyone on the team, from programmers to artists, were involved. Even sound director Koji Kondo threw in some wild ideas. By the end, the team had over 2,000 of them written down on sticky notes, which were then discussed, prototyped, tested, and culled, leaving the best of the best to be implemented into the final game. One of the ideas worked on the most was the concept of a sports-style live commentary announcing whatever the player was doing. The team had samples of both a generic newscaster-type voice, as well as a tsundere one, which I don't even care, which I'd have loved to have heard in action. After punching the numbers, the team realized it'd be too much work recording all that dialogue, in addition to this strange voice not feeling quite right. However, this feature was then modified into the game's staple, the talking flowers spread throughout each level. The team also wanted to make the game easier for the whole family to get through. They added Yoshi and Nabbit, who couldn't get hurt, gave levels difficulty ratings, with harder levels being not required, and added in the badge system, which could either make the game harder by turning the player invisible or making them run too fast, or easier by giving everyone a mushroom or making them bounce out of bottomless pits. Did these features work in practice? That's debatable, but hopefully later Mario titles will continue to become more accessible. Some of my favorite features, the The music-based ones were added due to Kondo and the music team being brought into the development cycle at a much earlier phase than usual, where previous music-based additions included Goombas and Koopas dancing during the boss. This time around, numerous stages focus on the music, as well as a badge that tasks the player with jumping on the beat. And in the sense of togetherness, the game can be played online, where occasionally other people playing the game will appear as shadows in the background and can help out by tossing down standees to revive those who've died, or by simply hinting at where some hidden spots in the level were. This is of course in addition to the reoccurring feature of 4-player local co-op multiplayer. During development, Tezuka understood that many people could be inspired to buy their very first Mario game after watching the, at the time, unreleased Mario Bros movie. Given Wonder would be the first game to release post-movie, so much time and attention was put into making all the animations vibrant and expressive. To do so, the number of joints on character models was greatly increased, allowing for all the characters' faces to be more expressive, and for all their movements to be stretchier and exaggerated, and this attention to detail was done for every character, for every animation, for every enemy, for every level element. Look at the simple Goomba. They bite at the player, they fear for their lives, they peacefully snooze, they look super grumpy when they're stuck in a single block. SMB Wonder was announced during a Nintendo Direct just 4 months prior to it releasing, and has gone on to sell 13.44 million units as of March 2024. To Sega's chagrin, it also came out just 3 days after the latest Sonic game. Wonder also marks the beginning of a new era. It's the first game to feature Kevin Afghani as the new voice of Mario and Luigi. It was certainly noticeable, but not bad per se, and hey, it actually makes my Mario impression a little bit more accurate. But I'll always be a Charles Martinet fan and wish him all the best in his future endeavors as Mario Ambassador, whatever that actually entails. Super Mario Bros. Wonder opens with a sizable group from the Mushroom Kingdom heading out on a diplomatic visit. The crew have been invited by Prince Florian to tour their neighbor, the Flower Kingdom. Florian is there to announce one thing, that the amulet he's worn his whole life matches the one that Peach has worn her whole life, and as such they're due to be wed. Wait? What? Oh, sorry, wrong story. Florian's there, but so is Bowser, who swoops in with this clown copter and steals a Wonder Flower. Using this power, Bowser merges with Florian's castle and flies off to corrupt the rest of the kingdom, trapping the poor inhabitants, the Poplins, as he goes. Once finished with his rampage, he takes up shop in the center of the kingdom and surrounds himself with protective cloud piranhas. As such, Mario, Luigi, Princess Peach, Princess Daisy, 2 normal Toads, Toadette, a few Yoshis, and Nabbit, for some reason, set out to rescue the inhabitants and to seek out royal seeds before Bowser has a chance to perform his own wonder that will captivate the whole kingdom, the whole world, the whole universe. Once the last of the cloud piranhas have been swooped up by the royal seeds, the king invites the crew inside to see his fully prepared wonder, a beat so captivating it will have everyone in the universe stomping their feet in perfect rhythm. Then he loses, the castle is turned back to normal, Bowser, Bowser Jr., and Kamek crash off in the distance. SMB Wonder is what at this point can be considered standard Super Mario Bros. Fare. Despite there being 12 playable characters, they all control almost the same. They can run, jump, wall jump, spin jump, and do a wee little spin while mid-air. The Yoshis can do most of this too, only they can't equip power-ups. They can, however, hover mid-air, use their tongues to eat enemies, and cannot get hurt. Nabbit is similar in that he also cannot equip power-ups and also cannot die. As far as power-ups go, the standard coin, Super Mushroom, Fire Flower, and Superstar all return. The new power-ups were solid this time around. The most visually enticing is the Elephant Fruit. Each character turns into an elephant version of themselves, gets both taller and wider, can swing their trunks to defeat enemies or smash blocks, and my favorite part, shouts out "Wowie Zowie" whenever they pick one up. The bubble flower is arguably the most useful. The bubbles turn most enemies into coins and act as very bouncy platforms. It often makes many a secret fairly trivial, but my favorite is the drill mushroom. The characters wear drill on their head. It lets them drill into the ground, drill into the ceiling, and the drill kills enemies when jumping from underneath. And really, I just like gliding along the ceiling. Lastly, a new type of coin has been introduced, the purple flower coins. Standard coins still net extra lives once 100 are collected. Flower coins can be spent in the various shops, or sometimes a poplin will request some to open up a new path. Of course, I mostly used them to buy standees. The main quote-unquote new addition to the game's power set would be the badges. Each alters the gameplay, some in more minor ways than others. The most useful, the first given, lets a player pull out a big hat to glide down with while midair. The second most useful lets the player swim like a dolphin, especially useful in levels with currents. Another cool one lets the character do a crouch jump a la Mario 2 USA. Another lets them do a vertical wall jump. Another lets them shoot out a horizontal grappling hook vine. The biggest shame is that, since none are required, I rarely equipped any. Since I found gliding the most useful of the bunch, I used it for almost the entire game, only switching to the dolphin kick in levels that required it to collect everything. Many were also there more for the gimmick. There's one that makes the player constantly bouncing, one that makes the player run super fast, one that makes them literally invisible. Neat ones for the levels they're designed for, but I'd be hard-pressed to take them outside of those. There are also a few that say make more coins spawn or make the player always start a level with a super mushroom. I didn't play with any of these, but I'm sure they're useful in certain cases. The world map is 1. Chunked into 7 different areas, each with their own type of wonder seed to collect, and 2. Chunked into 2 different types of paths. Linear paths akin to, like, most Marios, and 3D areas, much like the world maps from Super Mario 3D World. And breaking each map up this way made exploring it actually refreshing for the first time in ages. Unlike New Super Mario Bros. U, which tried and didn't quite nail emulating the exploration found in Mario World, adding in the open areas actually made me feel like there were things to find. Maybe running over this hill will give me a coin. It kinda looks like I can run around this wall, and wouldn't you know it, there's a pipe leading to Captain Toad. Oh, this path leads to a string of tougher levels that culminate with a warp to the special world. And now I can choose to do these levels in whichever order I want to. Each level also has a difficulty star rating, which could also weigh into the level selection process, but personally I rarely found the game difficult at all, so I often picked the closest level to where I was. The only levels that felt truly tough were those leading up to and within the special world. The stages themselves are wonderfully designed. Each of the standard levels has at least 2 wonder seeds to collect. One for finishing the Wonder Flower, and one for beating the level, with some having a third behind a secret exit. And much like the medals from the NSMB series, every level has 3 10 flower coins to collect. They're bigger flower coins that count as 10. Plus, like in 3D Land and 3D World, getting to the top of the flagpole is tracked. Even just taking the levels at their standard state, these are some good ones. So many of the new enemies have really fun interactions. I love that those tall mushroom guys collect coins as their bodies fall towards the abyss. The little guys that shoot bubbles or the ones that shoot grabbable sticks were fun. There are a few guys that turn into bouncy platforms, which led to some fun puzzles. And oh god, those guys with the teeth are terrifying. And they eat coins? Who let that happen? And it was really cool seeing inspirations from other modern platformers, like the Donkey Kong Country background, foreground hopping, or the silhouette levels, or the more musical-based ones like from Rayman. At about the midway point of each main level is a Wonder Seed, and every single Wonder Seed in this video game is absolutely stunning. It's miraculous how well done each and every one is. They're wonderful. The development studios set out to evolve the platforming space, and they did so in a way that only Nintendo could afford. Every Wonder Seed modifies the game, modifies the level, modifies the controls, modifies the gameplay in an entirely unique way, and almost every Wonder Flower is wholly distinct from one another. Sometimes it turns a pipe into a snake-like moving platform, another time it causes a stampede of bulrushes, or all the piranha plants in the level perform a musical, or the gravity of the level shifts onto the Z-axis, or maybe the character transforms into a goober that can climb up walls, or transforms into a Goomba that can't do much of anything, or transforms into a spiked ball that rolls through any hazard. They are all truly amazing. The whole time I found myself wondering what the next level could possibly hold. What wild twist would the next flower bring? And even on this second playthrough, half remembering all the fun effects, each of these segments were still incredibly fun to experience because at their core, they're fun. The surprise is intoxicating the first time around, but the mechanics themselves hold their own impeccably well. Also, throughout the world are single seed levels. These are smaller challenges that are interspersed in between larger levels. The badge levels actually utilized all the cool new badges with challenges distinctly designed for them. The running super fast badge was incredibly fun to use, the always hopping badge was tested well, and the invisible stages were actually tough. Turns out platformers are much harder when I can't see where I am. The other single seeds were also pretty good. One type tasked the player with finding a bunch of hidden coins, although as a single person, these turned me into constantly hopping around hoping to find the one hidden block I missed. I imagine these are smoother playing online or with other folks, and a few are more basic challenges. My favorites have to be the ones that required jumping to the rhythm, or maybe the ones that have Mario World and Sunshine music in them. The bosses, on the other hand, sucked. I don't know what it is about the Super Mario moveset in a 2D plane, but none of Nintendo's development studios can make bosses that are interesting in any way. Each of the Bowser Jr. fights involved stomping his head 4 times. The first, he's normal Jr., the next 3, he's Wonder Jr. and has a slight twist. A very slight twist. The airship bosses were laughably simple. There's a big button to the right. There are almost no meaningful obstacles on the way there. Press the button. I can hardly believe the game shipped with the bosses that required this little skill to beat. There's making obstacles easy enough for the whole family to navigate, but that at least involves putting up any obstacles. At least the final boss was really cool. I'm already a fan of good rhythm-based event, and going up against a big, green, smoking Bowser head and his many smoking hands was an excellent culmination. Completing the game is pretty simple for the most part. Exploring each of the levels is already a great time. Running back through to collect any missed seeds or 10 coins or flag balls was just as fun. And the final 2 challenge levels, the final challenge and the final challenge, were great celebrations of what made this game good. The first is a gauntlet of some of the best Wonder moments. The second, a really tough test of the most interesting badges. I had to really lock it in to finish the latter. If it didn't have checkpoints after the 3rd and 6th badge, it would be the hardest of any of the Mario Challenge levels ever. Just be careful for the standees. Standees, when playing online, can revolve fallen players. However, the bulk of them need to be purchased. Buying one from regular shops rewards an entirely random standee, including duplicates, and the flower coin counter caps at 999. This time around, I was more careful, always spending my coins whenever I got close to the cap, and when I only had a couple left of each, I bought the standees from the monger in the special world. For 30 coins, I could buy character-specific standees that always rewarded one of the uncollected ones. This time, I didn't have to grind for coins, but it took vigilance. During my first playthrough, it was my absolute least favorite part of this game, and it's a real shame I even had to account for something like it. While I don't find myself thinking of the Wonder soundtrack all that often, none of it is bad, none of it mediocre even. It utilized many similar aesthetic flares as the new Super Mario Bros. Series did, but in similar fashion to the gameplay, it polished everything just enough to be interesting again. I think my favorite theme from the game has to be the Dark Forest music. There's something pleasantly chill about its laid-back drum beat and happy melodic percussion ensemble. That is, of course, aside from the standouts, the musical levels. Any level that requires jumping on beat, or platforming through obstacles that pop in and out to an ever-quickening tempo, or avoiding a choir of piranha plants popping out of pipes to serenade the player, or running from a very large operatic boo, is immediately memorable. Finally, the art of this game is so pretty. The animations for each of these characters are the real highlight. There was so much love and detail put into every jump, every distinct way to enter and exit a pipe, every enemy as it walks, as it gets terrified by an oncoming hazard, and the 3D models are so stylized. In the new Super Mario Bros. Series, every character is shown in perfect profile. Their model, in essence, the same that would be used in a 3D game, just looked at from the side. In Wonder, they're designed to be looked at from the side. Mario's face is squished as to look good at that angle. The items are designed to have their backs hidden, allowing their faces to be bouncier. Plus, the additional joints allowed each model to be so much more cartoony. Not to mention every unique animation that came with all the Wonder effects. The rainbow missiles just looked amazing. The stretchy characters are so bubbly. I absolutely adore how when in Goomba mode, the character could just look up and down. The visuals themselves are similar to those found in the NSMB series, but every individual element was much more stylized and vibrant. The shading on the characters has much starker contrast, the colors more distinct. Every area looks and feels more unique. Even one-to-one comparisons like beaches, deserts, or lava caves all got their own traits and colors that differentiate them from similar areas in past games. This is very well shown by the airship levels. The wispy green magic flowing as Bowser's hair complements the now fully metallic exteriors quite well, but the highlight has to be the third area, Shining Falls. Its geometrically impossible golden waterfalls were majestic. Sure, it's still not the game based on Shigehisa Nakao's work that I still deeply want, but it's a major step in the right direction. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is a really great video game. As has been the case in all the recent games, it plays impeccably well. The vibrant animations and contrasting color schemes make every second sing. The level designers continue to hit it out of the park. So many fresh and fun ideas were added in this title, and with the addition of Wonder Flowers which alter the gameplay in truly fascinating and amazing ways, it's hard not to have a great time. Ranking this one is going to be tough. I've done my best to shed recency bias, and I have replayed many of the classic 2D titles in preparation for this return. That at only just over a year old, it's hard to get a truly accurate perspective. As a reminder, the current 2D Mario games ranked list is 14 Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 13 Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, 12 Super Mario Land, 11 New Super Mario Bros. Wii, 10 New Super Mario Bros. 2, 9 Super Mario Land 2, 8 New Super Mario Bros., 7 Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 6 New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, 5 Super Mario Bros., 4 Super Mario Bros. 3, 3 Super Mario All-Stars, 2 the Super Mario Advance series, and 1 Super Mario World. At the very least, I enjoy this game more than any entry in the new Super Mario Bros. Series. But how does Wonder truly compare to the original Super Mario Bros? How does it compare to Mario Bros. 3? I've stacked the ranking a bit by having 1 through 3 be Mario World, the Advance series, and All-Stars. These packages are nigh impossible to triumph over. Okay, I think I've got it. Our new ranking is 15 Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, 14 Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, 13 Super Mario Land, 12 New Super Mario Bros. Wii, 11 Super Mario Bros. 2, 10 Super Mario Land 2, 9 New Super Mario Bros., 8 Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, 7 New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, 6 Super Mario Bros., 5 Super Mario Bros. Wonder, 4 Super Mario Bros. 3, 3 Super Mario All-Stars, 2 Super Mario Advance series, and 1 Super Mario World. As it turns out, both Wonder and Mario 3 hold a pretty similar spot in my mind, but in the end, I cheated a bit, and I went to the overall series ranking and thought, is Wonder better than Galaxy? It's not, so it's just below 3, just above the original Super Mario Bros. Speaking of, Wonder and the remakes need to be properly sorted into the full ranking of every Super Mario platformer. So let's head to that next, this time with a special twist. When I reviewed and ranked each of these Super Mario platformers, at the time I was more concerned with seeing how they compared to one another. Every other game that I review, I give it a ranking out of 10. I have not done this for any Mario title. So now that I've ranked all 19 mainline games plus the All-Stars, Deluxe, Advance, and 64DS remakes, now it's time to properly give them all a rating. And of course, they will be ordered in the new overall ranking from worst to best, starting with number 23, Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels is not a very good game. While the physics were good for the time, they were also unrefined. It has the same music as the original, same art as the original, same enemies as the original, same stage hazards as the original, plus poison, mushrooms, and wind. But its biggest sin is that the development team opted to raise the game's difficulty by obfuscating platforms and tricking the player. Every time I leave feeling betrayed, where in every other Mario game, I leave having enjoyed solid platforming. Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels gets a poison mushroom out of 10. The poison mushrooms are only there to be annoying. Number 22, Super Mario Bros. Deluxe. I make it no secret that I don't enjoy the Lost Levels, nor do I particularly enjoy the original Super Mario Bros., but I can at least respect what the original did for the genre, for the industry. However, the only way to properly port these titles to the Game Boy Color was to zoom in on the game until I couldn't see 5 sprites ahead of Mario. There's some really cool additions, like the challenge and boo race modes, and the games themselves are remarkably well ported, but I already don't enjoy playing these games. I especially don't like playing them when I can't see 6 blocks ahead of Mario. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe gets a tricky boo race out of 10. The idea is cool, but it didn't quite nail the execution. Number 21, Super Mario Land. Nintendo's first handheld Mario was a decent first try. The physics aren't quite there, the levels loop on themselves a bit too often, but the amount of neat ideas the team had were amazing. It by no means is a bad game, but it's not one I find myself wanting to go back to. Overall, Super Mario Land gets an "Aw, Daisy" out of 10. She's in exactly one other Mario platformer. Wild. Number 20, New Super Mario Bros. Wii is the most mediocre the Mario series has ever been. Other than a baby's handful, there are no particularly interesting levels. Annoying levels are in abundance. Each are too long for their own good, the mechanics have never been more derivative, and seeking out the star medals was never as interesting as it should be. Overall, New Super Mario Bros. Wii gets a penguin suit out of 10. It might be an underutilized power-up, but it's nice they let me be a penguin. Number 19, New Super Mario Bros. 2 might not be a technically excellent game. It has many of the same faults as New Super Mario Bros. Wii, but the development team had the correct forethought to lean into an element that could be fun. And as it turns out, collecting unimaginable amounts of coins can be pretty darn satisfying. Overall, New Super Mario Bros. 2 gets a golden flower out of 10. It's surprisingly fun. Number 18, Super Mario Land 2 and the 6 Golden Coins. After trying their hand with a handheld Mario platformer with the original, the dev team made some remarkable improvements with Mario Land 2. While the game is short and Mario is a tad bit big on the screen, it's impressive how it feels like a millstep between Mario 3 and Super Mario World, despite releasing after both. Overall, Super Mario Land 2 and the 6 Golden Coins gets a Wario out of 10. So you see, that's where the trouble began. That smile. That darn smile. Number 17, Super Mario 3D Land is easily the worst 3D platformer in the Super Mario series, which is saying a lot, because 3D Land is pretty darn good. The lack of unique power-ups is a bit disappointing, the extra post-Bowser stages were a tad derivative, and not having a proper joystick doesn't help, but it's an incredibly solid game otherwise. Overall, Super Mario 3D Land gets a Bitty Buddies out of 10. And it gave us Bitty Buddies, they're the best, look at them. Number 16, New Super Mario Bros. Gets a bad rap. Yes, it started the now rote formula, but at the time it was amazing to finally get another really good 2D Mario. Maybe some of the secrets weren't the best, sure the Mega Mushroom was underutilized, but it's a really good platformer. Overall, New Super Mario Bros. Gets a Mega Mario out of 10. Number 15, Super Mario 64 is a technical feat, filled with some of the best designed and most iconic platforming arenas ever put to cartridge, a score that will echo through the ages, and a movement suite that with just a bit of refinement will make for some of the best platforming ever. But it doesn't look quite good enough yet, and the moveset was just coarse enough to be grating. Overall, Super Mario 64 gets a low poly Mario out of 10. Life could be a dream. Number 14, Super Mario Sunshine is always beautiful, especially if you love the beach, and it arguably plays really well once FLUDD has been accepted into your heart. Maybe I don't love searching each level for those interminable blue coins, but I do love running around, talking to Piantas, and cleaning up some icky paint-like goop. Overall, Super Mario Sunshine gets a Strollin' Stoop out of 10. Look at them, they're strolling! Number 13, Super Mario Bros. 2 USA is both a Mario game and a really good one. Sure, it's a bit weird, Mario and Co. can stand on most enemies, but once I got used to it, plucking veggies was a really fun mechanic, and the sense of adventure is immaculate, not to mention the top-of-the-line score. Overall, Super Mario Bros. 2 USA gets a Fanto out of 10. It's terrifying, it's amazingly fun. Number 12, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe is the best the New Super Mario Bros. Formula can get. The map is as close as the development team could get to World. The levels are almost visually interesting enough, the music is almost catchy enough. Where it's above the rest of the series is with level design. There are some excellent stages spread across the main game and New Super Luigi U, and the extra challenges were a fantastic addition. Overall, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe gets a Baby Yoshi out of 10. Is it a returning mechanic reworked in a slightly strange way? Yes, but it works in certain contexts. Do they look way too young to be that stoned? Also yes, but at least they're happy. Number 11, Super Mario Bros. Epitomizes a strong start. Given what the early NES was capable of, Super Mario Bros. Did a great job teaching the populace what a platformer could be. Which is to say, I respect it more than I enjoy playing it. Super Mario Bros. Gets a Super Mushroom out of 10. It's a classic. Number 10, Super Mario Bros. Wonder is the best 2D platformer in the series in decades. While the platforming itself feels much like that from the New Super Mario Bros. Series, the amount of polish and attention put into the rest of the game blows it out of the water. Every animation is so lovingly rendered, all the levels have such creative elements in their own right, and the world map is a fascinating combination of linear progression and 3D world-style open areas. And the Wonder Flowers are on another level entirely, bringing in a fantastic, wild new element into each stage that left me amazed every single time. Overall, Super Mario Bros. Wonder gets a person turned into a Goomba out of 10. Look at how cute their little Goomba Sonas are. Number 9. Super Mario 64 DS takes that already great Super Mario 64 hub world, courses, and music, and does just enough fine-tuning on the graphics and controls to push it over the edge for me. Plus it added a few really fun new levels, stars, and a whole bunch of hit-or-miss minigames. Overall, Super Mario 64 DS gets a group of mustache-obsessed bosses out of 10. They're all so concerned about the state of their or the player character's mustaches. It's great. Number 8. Super Mario Galaxy revolutionized the video game space by making platforms spherical, only 2 years after Psychonauts did it, and it's amazing. And it revolutionized games by making the player waggle a remote control around to do one of the most satisfying moves in Mario history. That's great too. And it revolutionized games by utilizing a full orchestra for one of the best soundtracks in Mario history. Also, the levels are really good too. Overall, Super Mario Galaxy gets a "so chunks, huh?" penguin out of 10. Look, penguins had to be here somewhere. This one's a good one. Number 7, Super Mario Galaxy 2 only exists because the development studio had too many ideas to cram into the original. The sequel was able to ever so slightly tune the controls, added incredible new mechanics, brought Yoshi back, and almost one-upped the soundtrack. Overall, Super Mario Galaxy 2 gets a Grandmaster Galaxy out of 10. The trend of final challenges to culminate Mario games has persisted since, and I am eternally grateful for it. Number 6, Super Mario Bros. 3 is one of the best platformers ever made. It is the perfect encapsulation of throwing a cool idea at the player and getting rid of it before it's cold. And with a suite of now iconic powers, excellent levels, and a really fun world to explore, it's almost amazing the whole thing fits on an NES cartridge. Overall, Super Mario Bros. 3 gets a Tanuki suit out of 10, as cute as it is iconic. Number 5, Super Mario All-Stars. A collection of the first 4 Super Mario games is almost unfair to rank. A collection that goes through and updates all the art and music while keeping the gameplay as accurate as possible? Even better. Overall, I give Super Mario Bros. All-Stars a lovely Toad animation, and oh wow, maybe they shouldn't have made the Goombas look different, a Peach riding an egg, and a hold up, is that a Yoshi? Out of 10. There's 4 games after all. Number 4, as a reminder, the Super Mario Advance series is ranked together, so to start with the sub-ranking within this ranking, number 4.3, Super Mario World Mario Advanced 2 should be the best Advance game. It's Super Mario World after all, but when it was brought over to this smaller piece of hardware, it lost screen real estate, vibrant colors, and sound quality, only to gain a few extra Dragon Coins. It's still a good game, but it lost the most of all the Advance titles. Super Mario World Super Mario Advanced 2 gets a friendly Dolphins out of 10. They're cute, but not really necessary. Number 4.2, Super Mario Advanced 4 Super Mario Bros. 3 is the same great Mario Bros. 3 from the All-Stars collection. That remained almost unchanged. But with the e-reader add-on, or in my case with the Nintendo Switch Online port, dozens of new, inventive, and quite difficult levels were added into the mix. A must-play for any Mario 3 fan. Overall, Super Mario Advanced 4 Super Mario Bros. 3 gets an E-coin out of 10. They've got character faces on them, and they were so fun to track down and collect. And number 4.1, Super Mario Advance. A remake of the USA Super Mario Bros. 2 is fantastic. It takes an already excellent game and improves it in every way. It's more fun to play, easier to explore, and there are more things to collect both in the main game and in the post-game. Of all the games in the Advance series, this title received the most impactful upgrades. Overall, I give Super Mario Advance a box art Mario out of 10. Look at how cute he is. Number 3, Super Mario Odyssey is the best playing Mario game. Controlling Mario has never been better, from jumping to somersaulting, and the addition of Cappy only adds to the mix. Long jumping, throwing Cappy, and diving into him is a top-tier combination that feels great to pull off every single time. Not to mention how creative each of Cappy's transformations is, how fun each of these playgrounds are to run around and explore, and it's the first game in the series to include tracks with lyrics. Overall, Super Mario Odyssey gets a Cappy out of 10, an incredibly useful game mechanic, and a really fun guy to be around. Number 2.2, Bowser's Fury makes me so excited about the future of the Mario series. Putting these stand-alone levels in a large open world was a really cool idea, and this game very nearly pulls it off perfectly. The worst part is that it inherits the run button from 3D World, when running around these now much more open areas requires a heavier hand on the camera stick. But when that's not an issue, it's incredibly fun to explore, all the cats are very cute, and the kaiju battles are pretty cool. Overall, Bowser's Fury gets a Bowser Jr.'s paintings out of 10. He's not a very good painter, and it looks like he caused the whole mess to begin with, but they're real cute in it. And number 2.1, Super Mario 3D World takes the platforming ideology of Super Mario 3D Land and expands upon it, creating a fantastic package of somewhat linear 3D levels. The main path is always fun, and searching for all the stamps and green stars only adds to the enjoyment. The new power-ups are really fun to use, all the bosses are fun to battle, and the soundtrack is absolutely roaring. Overall, Super Mario 3D World gets a Bowser's Lowrider out of 10. Why is his car so cool? And finally, number 1, Super Mario World. Super Mario World is the perfect platformer. Every stage is so fun to play through, the added verticality adds so much in terms of secrets, and the host of power-ups and enemies are a blast. And with the wonderful art and immaculate steel drum soundtrack that never gets old, I have literally zero complaints about this video game. Overall, Super Mario World gets a Mario with a cape riding Yoshi. An image so iconic, not only was it used as a trophy in Smash Bros. Melee, but they straight up made a Lego set out of it. It is the image from my childhood. Thank you so much for watching. I've really enjoyed my return to the series. Arbitrarily comparing and ranking games that I love is such a silly activity, and I love doing it. Let me know your scientifically researched rankings of every single Super Mario platformer somewhere on the internet, whether that's here in the comments or on social medias. Links to mine are in the description, but I'm at MarioWith everywhere. It doesn't matter, just let me know. While you're here though, if you'd like, you can leave a rating and even subscribe. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.